Hi, today we're going to work on the scale mail connected in a zigzag pattern. To start, I'm going to be using the large scales with 16 and 5/16 inch rings. And when you connect the rings together, when you connect the scales together, you'll notice that it's essentially, the scale is essentially, we're going to edit this, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The scale is essentially a jump ring with a bunch of metal hanging off of one end. You can connect them any way you want. You can connect it this way, here, here. It's just another jump ring with metal attached to one end of it. So, with that in mind, to start, what I've done is a series of 1-to-1-to-1 scale to ring lengths. Now, to do the zigzag pattern, instead of doing the traditional diagonal connections that I usually do, I'm going to have one row angling to the left and the other one angling to the right. You'll notice the one angling to the leftmost scale is on top. The one angling to the rightmost scale is on top. From there, I'm going to connect it just like I would any normal lengths of scale. I'm going to go through one scale on the bottom to the next one up on the top. And you'll notice that I'm actually switching the directions of my weaves, in the sense that the top row is all going to the left and the scales are on top of each other. The next row down is all going to the right and the scales are all on top of each other going to the right. And you'll see how easy they connect to each other. So I'm just gonna finish this part off really quickly, and then we'll get back and we'll connect the third row. So now we're ready for the third row, and you'll notice the first row is leaning to my left, the second row is leaning to my right. Well, obviously you can either go to the right or the left. To get the zigzag, I'm going to go to the left again. And meaning if the scales are going to the left, then the leftmost scale is on top. So each scale is going above the next one, or above the previous one. So each scale is going above the previous one. And I'm going to start with the rightmost ring connected, I'm going to start with the rightmost scale connected to the rightmost scale. And I'm just going to nudge it so it's off to the left again. And you just go 1-to-1, connecting each scale to the one above it. Number 3 to number 3. Number 4 to number 4. Most people, when they are making scale mail, for some reason that I don't understand, they start at the top and they work their way down one horizontal row at a time. When you do that, all of the scales on the bottom rows tend to get shuffled out of place, and you have to spend every row reorganizing it. When you work on the diagonal, once you get past the first couple of rows, you pretty much never have to organize it again. The scales themselves keep themselves organized. It requires a little bit more planning up front, but if you're used to doing any sort of tailoring work, any sort of fashion design work, that's second nature anyways. Sometimes what I'll do is I will count how many rows I'm going to need, and then I'll make the entire piece starting with the longest diagonal and going shorter and shorter each row. For this, I'm just doing a sample which I'll eventually turn into a necklace of some sort. So I'm only doing a dozen or so, 3, 6, yeah, a dozen scales in each row. A nice sampling for you to get an idea of just what it is I'm doing. So you can see the last couple ones want to go a little bit out of position just because I don't have enough there to have it stabilized yet. So now I'm done with the third row, which, as you can see, is going off to the left, and I've got one more to do. Now that I'm done with the third row, I'm just going to get my next piece. I'm not even concerned about the ones up there. I'm going to take a fourth row. That's going up this way. Now it's going to go up the other direction. And again, lay it all out nicely. Connect the last two together. And I'm just going to continue on up. Once I get this little bit finished, I can flip it all over for you and show you what it looks like. And then I'm going to show you a finished piece, the piece that was in the introductory photograph, and I'm going to show you how I connected the zigzagging pieces. No, I'm not going to do that. We're going to edit all that out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the next row in the same direction. You see how easily the pieces untangle. I had one scale that went above a previous one, and I was able to just lift it back into position there. That blue just jumped out of position, and I just gently lifted it back to where it belonged. Get my pliers out of your vision there. Allow you an opportunity to see what I'm doing. Three more rings to go. I've noticed a lot of people love to babble during these videos, and I'd rather just edit it and make it really short. No point in watching me do this for 20 minutes when you can just watch it for 2 and get the idea. Maybe, to make it easier on my son who is filming all this, maybe we'll just put it all this video footage up straight, and you can let me know if you want me to edit it down or not. So here, we've got the top row going to the left, then to the right, to the left, to the right. You've seen how I connect it? That's what it looks like from the front. I love the way it looks. Now it occurred to me that some of you might not know my technique for connecting on the diagonal. So I'm just going to show you that really quickly. Again, I've got a handful of pieces here. My son is being very patient, letting me do this while I babble. So this time I'm going to connect them in the same direction. And you'll notice I'm setting up the scales ahead of time. I'm straightening them all up so that they're all facing in the same direction. They're all going to my left. I start with the one that is underneath all the others, in this case the right-hand side. connect one to one, the second scale to the second scale. You'll notice this third scale slipped underneath. That's a common problem when I'm starting off the scale stuff, but I just lifted it back into position and it goes fine. Now there's all sorts of other things that you can do. You'll notice I am putting the second row so that it sits on top of the first row. But you don't need to. You can actually have it underneath the first row. You can actually have the jump rings placed between the rings instead of, well, can't even explain it easily. Right now I'm just connecting it in a very simple manner. When you think about the jump rings, when you think about the scales as jump rings with a piece of metal, you'll discover that it doesn't really matter where you're connecting the rings. You can make as many different patterns of scales as you want. If you think that the metal on the scale always has to hang down, then you're eliminating all the other possibilities of where you can have the scales pointing. I did one piece a few years ago that I really liked where I added the jump rings in a different position between the scales so that every other row popped forward. Instead of having them above, I kind of had them tucked underneath, and it pushed the whole row forwards. That gave a very nice visual effect, but it was a little too subtle and required, I think I need to do it again in different shades so that the popping forward effect really stands out more. Sometimes I'll do a piece like this just as a test to see if I like it. That was one piece I did like. Okay, so I've straightened it out again. You can see that I've now got two diagonal pieces. I'm going to throw in a third one just to kind of stabilize it. There we go. Almost. Get down there. There we go. Alright, I'm going to throw in this third row, again starting with the underneathmost scale, which in this case is on the right because I'm going all in the same direction. And 10 more rings, and then I'm going to connect these two pieces together, the one I'm making and the one I just made in the zigzag. I don't know why I decided to do this piece in greens and blues with a little bit of black. It was just kind of fun. Sometimes I get bored doing the piece all monochrome, all in the same color. Sometimes I'll do patterns, color patterns. Other times I'll do it random. The fun thing with random is that if you truly do it randomly, for some reason you'll always end up with patches that are like tons of green and another section that's almost all blue, and it never looks random. So to get it to look random, you actually have to unrandomize it. Weird phenomenon of chainmail. I don't know why that happens. So you can see I'm not spending much time having to organize my scales here. Anybody who's done scale the so-called traditional way knows that half your time you're rearranging your scales so that they sit properly. Here, I just zip right through it. Business tip: when you're doing something like this for a business, you have to find efficient ways to do it, because Your hourly wage is what determines whether or not you can make a living. If you take forever organizing a piece, then you don't spend the time being able to actually work. You spend too much time organizing. So, this piece, I had it this direction. So I'm going to reorganize this because I just threw it in a pile. Okay, so I've got two pieces here that I want to connect. Well, that's easy. If you lay them near each other, you will see that it's going to connect this way. So here, again, I start with the one that's underneath, in this case on the right-hand side. And once again, I'm just going to go one link at a time. And remember how I said in random patterns, it's very rarely looking random? You'll notice that I just connected black to black and blue to blue, and now I'm connecting 3 greens to 3 greens. What are the odds that 2 random patches would have the first 5 the same colors? Doesn't appear random at all. Sometimes I think chainmail is the exception that proves the rules. For example, it actually takes more effort to undo a piece of chainmail than it does to make it. It's the exception that proves the law of entropy. Okay, so sometimes you have to redo that because I don't have as much flexibility on the piece that I'm attaching. What I want to do is lift it above the edge of the next scale I'm about to attach. I'm going to go green to black, and the green that I'm going to be connecting into next, this one, I want to take the ring and just lift it over so it sits on top. Otherwise I get that bunching up like I just had, which is mildly annoying. Green to green. And lift that on top of the next scale I'm about to attach into. Green to green. Yeah, these two are almost identical because now I'm going to go blue to blue. One of these days I'd love to calculate the odds of this and see just how often 2 seemingly random pieces appear to be identical. Okay, so green to green, slip that on top. Last, the blue to that last green. And for the great reveal, you have 4 rows of zigzag or 5 rows of zigzagging, and then it starts going all in the same direction. And you see how this shifted position, that's what happens in the last rows often. And there you have it. How to connect how to connect scale mail zigzagging, and how to connect it in the regular old-fashioned way. Thanks.